Welcome back to the garage. So you're with me looking at my engine, which is sitting on the stand. This is my 3 litre or 3.1 litre SC, and if you haven't seen this video before or this series, I'm in the middle of converting it to EFI using a 3.2 Carrera intake, and I'm also going to be adding a turbocharger along the way to try and pep up the performance a little bit. I haven't rebuilt this engine. It came to me in a running car, a nice running car actually. It runs really well, and it has zero issues, completely zero. No oil leaks, it doesn't drip a lot, it doesn't do any oil. It only has the occasional puff of smoke every 7 or 8 starts. The fuel distributor, the warm regulator, everything works perfectly. Cold start, hot start, no issues whatsoever. It's 100% perfect, and I'm going to ruin that. Well, I've ruined it now by doing all of this. So you can see some of the other videos if you want to see the parts and pieces that I've chosen. I'm just going to go through and show you my wiring and where I'm up to. So I'm just going to pause the video and turn the camera around. Okay, so one of the things I've done is I've installed a cylinder head temperature sensor into the camshaft tower. Now I know some people use these bolted to the fins with a little clamp. Didn't really like the idea of using the sensor as a clamp because I don't believe it's meant to have that sort of torque exerted on it itself, not on the tip anyway. And so yes, I've chosen to do that. I did try the Cluet sensor that was to be mounted into the fins here at the back, but for whatever reason mine was really loose and wobbly, so I wasn't happy with it, so I ended up ditching that. And if anybody wants to buy one off me, I've got one for sale now. So I've bolted on the 3.2 Carrera intakes. My throttle body's there, my TPS is on the side, just so I know, well, because it was there and I wanted to make it work. But the wiring, so I've chosen these Bosch coils, and I don't have any metal straps or retaining clips. I have used these on a couple of cars in the past, and they pose zero issues. They stick on the plugs fairly well. I don't think they're going to go anywhere, but anyway. It's not being twin plugs, so there's no plugs on the bottom, just on the top row. I've got my stock fuel rails, I've got some aftermarket injectors in there, some Bosch. I think these are 440cc injectors, which should be good for 300-ish, maybe 350 horsepower. And I'm using the fuel pressure regulator from Adapt Motorsport over on this side of the engine, and the damper will go on this side. So what I've done is I've mounted the multi-pin connector on a little plastic bracket that I've made and bolted it to the side of the intake, and this is normally where the 3 sensors are mounted for the, the pulley, the crank position, top dead center, and head temperature, or whatever it is. So I've run a power wire, well, I've run a couple actually, but one for the injectors, we'll talk about the coils first. So power wire for the coils, which goes around and branches off and goes to each of the individual coils. And of course it loops back and it comes down and goes to each of these coils here. So it's the little red wire there. That's what do they call that? TEF cell wire. It's really hard stuff, and my wire strippers don't like it because it's so slippery. The rest of the wiring, I've gone back to TXL wire, which I think is more than satisfactory for a backyarder like me. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the TEF cell stuff is really, like, that's the same gauge as this. These are all, I think, 18 gauge, maybe 20. Let me just double check. What did I buy? Oh no, they're 20. So these are 20 gauge, and that TEF cell wire is actually 18 gauge. And you can actually, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but visually that is narrower. And when you do strip it, when you look at the actual sheathing that comes off, it's paper thin, but it's really tough. So kudos to you, TEF cell, kudos to you. So I've run I've got 6 trigger wires for the coils. Obviously they're all here, and I've put little heat shrink labels on them, injectors and ignition and whatnot. So there's one running to each individual coil, and then I've got the 2 ground wires. A little bit of controversy over these. The black one will be the power ground wire, and the white one, I believe, is what they call a signal ground. And some people say that that one should go back to the sensor ground on the ECU, and others say they should just be grounded on the engine. And I've got all my 8 grounds for this side here, and I'm going to put these onto a ring terminal, and I'm going to mount them to the engine, probably to the throttle plate, because there's lots of little studs here, or maybe to one of the studs that holds the fuel injector rail on, or whatever. But there's good grounding through the the inlet manifold to the heads to the engine. There is a good grounding point. In fact, that is the factory grounding point on a 3.2 Carrera engine. All the grounds go to that point there. There's about 7 or 8 wires that go there, so I believe that'll be fine. And of course I've got the ground wires on this side too, which probably should have made a little longer, but I'm going to probably again put them onto a terminal and mount them to this manifold here. So I've done the same for the injectors. I've got, you know, a power wire that comes through the back, runs around to each injector, and it branches off, and then I've got the trigger wire for the injectors running back through to the plug as well. So I've got 2, I guess what you would call sub harnesses. In hindsight, I'm wondering whether I should have actually made a plug here, which sort of seems unnecessary, but I guess it might have been handy if the ignition and the fuel injector sub harness was unpluggable from here, because then you could service it, or you could modify it, or you could troubleshoot if you ever have any issues. But I guess that's just more work and potentially another point of errors being introduced. I still have to be very careful when I choose where these are all, when I insert these into each of their little homes. What else? In terms of tools, nothing. Well, a couple of tools I've been using. A little Dymo label maker's come in quite handy. A friend of mine loaned me his Delphi crimpers to do the open barrel splices for where I'm piggybacking the power leads to extend the branching them out, I should say. And I'm also using these crimpers here to do the terminals on the coils and the injectors. And a couple of times I've gotten stuck where I've put the pins in and then I've had to pull them out because I forgot to put heat shrink on. And this is the biggest issue for me, is remembering to put heat shrink on and where to put it before you put stuff on. And even though they say, you know, put your connectors on last, it still requires a lot more planning ahead, and I'm still not 100% sure what I'm doing, so I've made a few mistakes. But what I have found is, even though you can buy, you can go on eBay and you can buy these little de-pinning tools for connectors, I found they weren't that great. What I did find was a tiny little piece of, I don't know, it's not even 1 millimeter, maybe 0.5 millimeter diameter spring steel. So I bent that like that, and I can push that in, and it's perfect to de-pin my coils, pins from the coil plugs. What else? So I've ended up using Raychem heat shrink. I haven't shrunk that part yet. The reason why I've chosen this is, well, I've never used it before, and I thought, here's an opportunity. And I like it because when you shrink it, it's still nice and floppy. It doesn't go stiff, and it's supposed to last a long time, so that's good. The issue I'm about to have, and I don't quite know what to do, is when you have a branch like this. So I've got the wires that, you know, come across to this side and to that side, and they've got to go up to the plug. What are you supposed to do here? I mean, what I've done here is I've bent them back, and I'm going to put heat shrink over the top after I do this branch here. But I'm just wondering if that's the right way. Is that putting too much stress on the cables? Do wires like to be bent like that? Probably not. But I don't know what else you're supposed to do. I'm trying to avoid wrapping it with tape. If I do need to wrap it with tape, I will. And I do have some of this Tessa tape, this little cloth tape, which is actually quite nice to use. It's not sticky on the outside. And yeah. So anyway, that's where I am at the moment. I'm just waiting on one more of these coil plugs, because I ruined it. Yep, I ruined it. And I'm not happy with how I've routed these either. One's over, one's under. It's just, every time you put something on here, you want to try and keep it clean and tidy, but it's got to go somewhere. And I probably haven't made these long enough, because I can't, you know, tie them up to the injector rail and stuff, you know. So I'm still learning, still lots to learn. Anyway, that's my progress for now, and please tune in for please like and subscribe and share this video.